Gemma Holgate is an author, journalist, publisher, and well-being specialist. She's the author of Connected, The 12 Ways of Well-being for a Holistic, Healthy Life. Her second book, Where Your Book Begins, comes out in May of this year. She is based in the UK. Welcome to Notes from a Ghost, a podcast about stories and the people who tell them. My name is Charlie, and I'm a ghostwriter. I love a good story. I hope you enjoy this one. Gemma, thanks for being here.
Hi, Charlie. Thank you for having me.
So I guess I'll start with something that I think every writer struggles with, but especially writers who are parents or new parents or who have sort of other demands on their time. And that is kind of writing when you can. And I had seen you posted something about that.
Yeah. So I have a little girl who turned 1 in December. And the sort of all of 2024 was kind of trying to find this balance between being a full-time mum and having her at home with me and trying to run my business and ghostwrite or write books. And so it was, yeah, it's been a really interesting juggle of learning kind of how and when to write when I can. I found myself, she's pretty good at napping during the day. So there's usually a nap in the morning and a nap in the afternoon. And so I find myself the moment she's down for that nap in the morning or in the afternoon, I sort of run to my laptop and try and sort of write as much as I can. After a while, I'm, checking the time and listening out for her, making sure that she hasn't woken up, and then doing the same in the afternoon, and then if I have to, trying to do that at night as well. So yeah, it's just trying to schedule the day so that the moment she's down, she's asleep, I can run to my laptop and try to write.
It's seems to me that there's a flexibility there
Mhm.
is the big takeaway, no matter what your schedule looks like. And I've even found blocks of time work really well.
Mhm.
That rather than saying, okay, it has to be in the morning or it has to start at this time or whatever, if it's just if I can get 2 hour and 45-minute bouts of writing done today,
Yeah.
I'm in good shape.
Yeah. And it's looking at what you can do, even if it's just 10 minutes. 10 minutes, doing 10 minutes today is going to put you further ahead than not doing 10 minutes today. It's all about being able to kind of, make those really small steps. I even do things like if I'm awake in the middle of the night, which often happens, is making notes on my phone if something comes to me, literally writing wherever I am and being able to add those into the manuscripts. Yeah, take whatever moments you can, carry a pen with you, have your phone with you, and write whenever you get the chance.
When you posted that, or when you kind of weigh in on some of these issues of how to get the work done, did you get any weird pushback or anything? I had one experience where I posted something very similar,
Mm.
and somebody was like, easy for you to say. And they basically, but it was very clear that what they were saying was, it was like I had threatened their excuses for why they don't write.
Okay.
And it was very much like they were picking a fight with themselves in my feed. I'm just wondering how that was received.
Yeah, so I didn't get any particular pushback from that post, but I think back to before I had Maddie, and I used to be one of those people who, would say to people, just, you need to find time to take care of yourself. And that always got a lot of pushback from people around, everything else tends to come first before yourself. And yeah, I understand that a little bit more now. So yeah, I didn't get any pushback from that post, but I think it's being mindful that everybody's life looks very, very different, and how you interact with that. But yeah, I think a lot of people use time as an excuse, and it's about, as I said, even if you can just do 10 minutes, it's progress.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, I find maybe one of the easiest places to find those 10 minutes is in like the scrolling and stuff that I could just as easily
Mm.
do even just a little bit less of. And yeah, now there were a couple other I when I was getting ready to do this show, I was watching some of the reels you've posted of giving people writing advice and kind of weighing in on your own experiences as a writer. And there was another one you mentioned being an underwriter versus an overwriter. And this is one that maybe doesn't get as much airtime. But can you explain that difference and kind of where you fall in that spectrum?
Yeah, so an underwriter is somebody who kind of doesn't. Maybe it's easier to do it the other way around. So an overwriter is somebody who writes and writes and writes and then edits down to their particular word count. An underwriter is somebody who I think is a bit more kind of mindful about what that word count is and meeting that and not kind of, just going off and doing it and editing it all later. And I definitely steer towards that kind of underwriter side of the spectrum. I really kind of dislike this idea of putting in all of that work and then having to cut it all out. I would much rather kind of take a few minutes and really think about things and how I can condense things down, and then add to it later if I need to, rather than cut out all of my precious words, which just feels so awful to me. So I'm one of these people who will look at a book in its entirety, look at how many words it needs to be, break that down per chapter, and I'm really conscious about working to that word count. But I'll always kind of steer on the side of underwriting and go back and add more later if I need to.
And when you look at the final product, the final word count, there's this phenomenon. I wish there was a word for it. Maybe there is, where it's like there's almost like a constant in the word count where, let's say, you find yourself adding 200 words and then you maybe cut 200 words, but they aren't necessarily the same
Yeah.
200, and then you're back to your original, couple thousand words or whatever it was for the chapter. Do you find that happening?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I do. And yeah, adding paragraphs in, but then taking them out of other places. Again, just kind of trying to limit that elimination of words process. There's something about it that's really, really, really icky for me. I don't know what it is.
Well, that's funny. I And then there's that whole kill your darlings thing of like sometimes that attachment to some section is actually like a blinking red light that's the part that maybe needs to go.
Yeah, yeah. I tend to find it's the biography element of a book where you're like, I want to tell you all of my personal stories, but they're actually, not 100% relevant to the thread of where this book is going and adding value to the person's personal development. So yeah, that tends to be the bit that needs that has a need for that execution process.
Yeah, it's brutal out there. Are there any other like kind of either or sort of like dichotomies for writers where we find ourselves falling into one of two camps? I know there's what's the other one, like planners and something like that. Planners and pantsers, is that?
Planners and Pantsers, yeah, yeah. So that's one where I got bitten heavily with being a pantser. So a long time ago, before I started doing sort of working in personal development, I decided that I wanted to write a novel, and I was going to write a mafia novel. And I literally I set off writing, and I wrote, pretty much three quarters of what I thought was going to be this like incredible, of your seat type thriller with all sorts going on. And I met an editor, and she'd published loads of books, and she said to me, well, I'll have a look. Let's work together. And I was, oh, this is brilliant. This is just gonna, like, she's just gonna tell me how marvelous this book is. And she sat down and she had a look at it, and she was like, Hmm. And she kind of went back and took me through kind of character development and story arc and plot and all of this stuff. And this novel just didn't have any of them. And by the time we'd sort of gone back and looked at everything that needed doing with this book, it just wasn't what I'd set out to do. And I never picked it back up again. In fact, I never tried to write a novel again after that one.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but not because I was, kind of disheartened about it, but because I realized that actually to be really good at this, to kind of master that craft, there is a plan and a structure to follow, and um, in order to kind of take your heroes on that journey. So now I'm going to leave that to the experts who are marvelous at all of that kind of creative side of it, and stick to being a non-fiction planner and absolutely kind of having that non-fiction plan and structure up front and work into that. And I encourage everybody that I work with to go through that planning process.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, you're looking at mine. I do the corkboard thing and everything. And
Mhm.
I mean, just I don't really know. I mean, maybe if you're just an incredible, it's kind of like the thing how like almost everyone is a visual learner. There's like just in the same way, almost there are very few like night owls. That's not actually a thing. I feel like there aren't really that many like people where just they have what it takes inside them to
Mhm.
without any kind of, because even if you think of people who are like great journalists and can produce copy quickly, they find some way to organize the raw material before it
Yeah.
goes on the page. Yeah, and I don't know, maybe that I'm such a planner that I don't get it, and I don't and I'm misrepresenting how a pantser would do it.
Yeah, I think, once you've kind of got that formula, I think, and you can do that, off by heart almost, then go ahead, be a pantser. But I think there's kind of that learning that structure first, and planning. And actually I find that planning makes everything else easier, going back to looking at my word count and writing when I can. And, having a plan and a structure means that when I do get that chance to sit down at my laptop, I know where I am and where I'm going and what I need to do next. And that just seems to make me more productive.
Now, do you have like like a writing hot take that you feel like people need to hear?
Oh, what do people need to hear? I guess it would be around, I posted about this recently actually, just kind of starting. I like to do what I call pencil plans. So I always start a new project in a physical notebook with a a notepad, a pen, or a pencil. And that just kind of allows me to kind of think around the topic and around the book before I then make a proper plan. And it just lets me kind of empty everything out of my head onto a page. And it's something that I can then go back to. And that I just find that really helpful around kind of not setting things in stone, but having it as that kind of creative scribble, draw little hearts and flowers around it, but just kind of get it down on the page before I start and work out what direction it's going in.
Mm. Yeah, I think people really underestimate what a minimum viable outline could look like.
Mhm.
And I always tell that I don't know how it works in the UK, but in like US copyright law, a sheet of paper where you have written down an idea is enough to kind of show that it's yours. Because I think people have this, especially people who are like total beginners, have this weird paranoia that people are going to steal their idea or something like that.
Mhm.
To the point where they won't talk about it out loud, public place or something. And where it's like, if you literally put that on a Post-it note, you'd be safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, then you've made a start, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, what about a warm take? Like in those are something this used to be a question I asked everybody and it kind of fell off and I want to bring it back, but it's basically like, especially on LinkedIn, I feel like we get a lot of hot takes or people being almost like purposely controversial or whatever. Whereas a warm take is something that is actually not at all controversial, but is just good advice or common sense, but probably needs to be reiterated.
Good advice. Don't wait until a week before your book launches to tell people that you are writing a book. I've seen this a couple of times recently, where people have gone, I'm launching a book next week. Over the next few days, I'll tell you what it's called, what the cover is, and what it's about. And yeah, it blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, and that has come up. We've done a couple of episodes about like PR, and obviously this idea that you would market your book after it's already out is a similar kind of point of confusion. When should you start telling people that you're writing a book?
For me, I would start telling people as soon as you start writing. Tell people that you trust, people that are going to encourage you, take them on this journey with you. And then 6 months before you're ready to launch, tell everybody that you come across.
I really like the email signature pre-order link. I'm a huge
Mm-hmm.
fan of that with the little thumbnail of the cover.
Nice.
Um, the thing that I was a shock to me the first time I was helping someone promote a book was how often you need to repeat yourself. That it isn't enough to just say I'm writing a book. It's like you need to kind of just mention it again and again and again. Every so often I'll post a book I've worked on that I have been sharing about for since it came out, and I'll invariably get like people I talk to all the time who reply with like congratulations or that's so cool you wrote a book. And it's like, people are busy, people have their own lives and they're not sitting around thinking like, okay, when's Charlie's book day or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember what the percentage is, but it's only a very small percentage of your network sees your posts,
Mm.
on LinkedIn and places like that. So, to reach everybody in your network, you've gotta keep pushing it and telling people about it. And I think people are really interested as well, especially people that haven't written a book or, would like to write a book of their own one day. They're interested in, what the experience is like and what you found easy and what you found difficult and what the pitfalls and the struggles and the good stuff has been. And I think if you can get people invested in what you're doing and how it's coming together, um, I think that's only a positive thing for when the book is ready to come out.
So I want to get into something you write about, but you've also kind of that comes into your coaching and other work you've done, and that is a well-being.
Mhm.
And I know that's like a huge topic, but I guess what I wanted to really focus on is how does that like what would be your well-being advice for ghostwriters and the authors we work with? And maybe how can you bring kind of well-being best practices into that kind of collaborative work?
Yeah, so I think, working on some of the books that I've worked on this year, excuse me, and writing my own book, writing a book is such a huge investment emotionally, physically, time wise, mentally. And, we have to take care of ourselves in that process. And as a ghostwriter, you have people opening up to you, and sharing parts of their story that, I can't count the number of times I've heard, Gemma, I've never told anybody that before. As we're working together on a book, because, when you start to look at people's memories and people's experiences, it kind of opens, some of the other things that maybe they haven't thought about for a long time, or they, just kind of jogs other memories. And, putting yourself out there is really, but really vulnerable, and it's really scary. And as a ghostwriter, you're there as part of that process. And sometimes some of the things that come out are, quite sort of traumatic and quite sensitive and quite intense. So I think there's definitely a well-being aspect to be mindful of when working as a ghostwriter with your author, in terms of taking care of yourself, helping the author to take care of them, and then kind of within that creative process, if you're writing the book yourself, in terms of that kind of element of vulnerability. And I think this is bringing in some of those well-being elements around, kind of debriefing and having people that you can talk to as a ghostwriter, encouraging authors to seek additional support or talking sort of therapies, if that's the kind of thing that you feel that they need. And just generally within the industry, I guess encouraging people to take care of themselves. It's work like any other type of work. If you're in a business, you'd have somebody making sure that you took your holidays, that you weren't working, or you'd hope that you weren't working all hours of the day and night. And I think often as ghostwriters, if we're freelancers or self-employed, we don't have somebody checking off our hours and making sure that we're not running ourselves into the ground. That's something that we've got to do for ourselves. So I think it's probably something that maybe hasn't been considered as much, that sort of link between being a writer and your well-being. But there's definitely some crossover and some food for thought there.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question. Is there, just from what you've seen, are there well-being challenges that are unique to writing? I mean, the one thing that comes to mind is, I don't like, loneliness is maybe too heavy a word, but the fact that you do this work alone for the most part, and you fuel it with reading, which is also done alone, and there seems to be something to that.
Yeah, yeah. It is a very can be a very solitary thing. But at the same time, there's other, there's lots of avenues to have kind of community and connection. Things like book clubs or writers groups, and kind of pushing yourself to go to places like that. Also that kind of, I guess, that flexibility, in terms of being able to write wherever you want to, go to a cafe, talk to people, write there, go out into nature, and write there. These are all things that are going to kind of help you with your well-being while you're writing away.
And I guess too, it's kind of self-selecting. I mean, nobody's making you go be a writer or whatever. And so I guess most people I know who do this have it's that, I guess, that introvert extrovert thing where you could be really sociable, but like you're your best self on your own anyway.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and then there is a big element of being able to do what you're passionate about and being creative, that does have a positive impact on your well-being. So being able to do that as a writer is great. It's just making sure you get the balance.
And you've written a book about well-being and kind of a well-being informed approach to life called Connected. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the idea for Connected came at the beginning of 2020. I'd just gone self-employed, and I'd started to do loads of networking, like you're supposed to. And I met all of these incredible people working in well-being, doing all sorts of um, incredible and interesting things that just weren't promoting themselves at all. And then obviously March 2020 came, and suddenly I had all of these people that I knew that were working in well-being, and all these people that I knew who needed well-being support and interventions as we went through lockdown. And so the model of Connected is something that I've been working on myself for about a year before I wrote the book. And it's based on what I call the four spheres of connection. So 4 elements of connection that we need within our life to live well. And that's connection to yourself, connection to others, connection to the world, and connection to a sense of purpose. And so I used that basic framework to start working with these well-being experts. And I split each of those 4 into 3 subsections. So that's where the 12 areas comes from. And I ended up interviewing, I think it was 45 well-being or practitioners and business owners across all sorts of different areas that I felt impacted holistic well-being. So everything from personal trainers and yoga instructors to mortgage advisors and people that help with insurance, and people who use horses to help people express their emotions, and artists, photographers, writers. And I interviewed them and I put their information, advice, and guidance into this book under these 12 headings, and I published their contact details as well. So it became a bit of a cross between a self-help book and a well-being directory, so that if you read something and you thought that person, either does what I need, or I have a really, I feel really connected to what they've said, you can then find that person and work with them if that's something that you want to do. So the book came out October 21. It took, I'd spent 12 months sort of researching and doing all of my interviews. I wrote it in 6 weeks after that. And then, took sort of 5 or 6 months to publish the book. And it's been a really amazing experience.
And it sounds like that format, you did something where, and I've seen this can have such an amazing impact on how a book lands, and that is curating experts. And then all of a sudden you've got like 40 people who, it's as much their book as yours, and they'll feel inclined to share it, promote it, talk about the fact that they're in it, makes them look good. I love that format.
Yeah, it was it was the right thing to do for that book. 45 was a lot, but it was really great. We had this wonderful launch slash well-being fair to release the book. People who contributed had stands, and people could come and talk to them, and they read out parts of what they'd contributed, and it was just a really kind of lovely community kind of feel to it. So yeah, it was great.
That sounds really cool. Plus
Mhm.
taking it, like having that kind of in-person event, and an event that's more than a book party, that's pretty cool. Now you have another project going on that's helping other people kind of have that moment for themselves and become authors, and that is Madison House Press.
Yeah, so Madison House Press is the kind of publishing side of what I do. So I work kind of with the sort of pre-publishing aspect, ghostwriting, book planning, book coaching, and then Madison House Press is the publishing side of it. So we work as a traditional publisher. You don't pay up front to publish with MHP. It's really exciting. It's definitely something that I've wanted to do for a really long time. I find that people kind of feel really frustrated sometimes and really unsure about the kind of publishing industry. And so I wanted Madison House Press to be something that was really simple and that was really focused, and that just genuinely wanted to help people publish their books. So we specialize in nonfiction, in sort of personal development and memoir, and we're working with some incredible authors, right through from that ideas stage, getting them, through writing that manuscript, and then looking at launching. five or six this year, 25. And yeah, it's really exciting.
That's great, and that's a really nice number of books. I mean, that's just over 2 a month. That seems like a perfect number.
Yeah, yeah. Well, obviously, we'd like to grow that and have more authors and more people working with us and helping more people. But it's
And, what kinda authors are you looking for? Like, who should maybe seek out Madison House?
yeah. So we're looking to work with people who have their own kind of coaching model or leadership model or a unique kind of framework that they use to help people. If you looking for people like that, I'd be really interested in publishing some more personal stories around addictions, overcoming kind of personal illness. If people want to share their stories around that, some more kind of inspirational stories, and then anything that just helps people to develop personally, helps them to grow and have some sort of personal transformation. You can absolutely get in touch with us.
Cool. Those are some of my favorite books to read. Those are having such a moment too, because I think we've grown in the last few years in our ability to talk about those issues and to accept that probably the popularity of those stories has a lot to do with the universality of addiction as an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all struggled in some way, and we all know people that have struggled, and having those kind of inspirational stories or frameworks or techniques of how to support yourself or to support others, I think they work really well, like you say, because it's something that's really relatable.
If I can turn that on its head and go back to that idea stage that you're talking about, that
Mhm.
where you start working with authors, it seems to me like if I was going to do a memoir, whether it's like a business book or something else, and someone say overcame an addiction or they dealt with some awful disease, in some ways that's easier from a storytelling point of view because there's kind of a hero's journey built into that, and there's adversity and there's conflict. What is your advice for the person who kind of had it pretty easy and went from like strength to strength and say they want to write like a founder's book, but it's really about how they had a good idea and they got funding and they made it happen, or, there's no real adversity there or whatever. How do you create the story or find the story in that?
Yeah, I think this is all about how you add value to the reader, how you kind of teach them something. So I think as long as you can come away and say, well, these are the things that I've learned, these are the things that I would do again, these are the things that I would recommend that you do, having those kind of practical steps is just as valuable as being able to say these are the struggles that I've been through. I think as long as the reader can come away and say, you know, wow, this book has made me feel something, then that's that's also a book worth reading.
And now that you've kind of found yourself on both sides of the publishing process, what has publishing other people's work taught you about being an author? And then I guess vice versa, what did you bring to that process as an author?
Yeah, so it's taught me that you don't know what you don't know about writing and publishing and the general sort of process. And the kind of value of working with somebody that does know. I've said it before. I wish I had somebody when I wrote my book that could give me that kind of advice so that I didn't have to go through some of those pitfalls and struggles myself. So it's taught me that, and being able to give somebody some of that wisdom and benefits of my experience is really nice. It's taught me that, going back to that kind of solitary aspect, that actually writing doesn't have to be a solitary pursuit. You can work with somebody, you can have a really, really good connection with somebody to help bring that book to life. And I guess from an author perspective, it's just made me realize kind of what I want Madison House Press to be. Like I said, I think people often find publishing frustrating, and feel disappointed and let down and like a number. And so I really want, Madison House Press to be a community for authors, a family almost, and for them to feel like I care about their book almost as much as they do,
Mm.
because, you know, when I ghostwrite a book, I generally do care about their book as much as they do, and, and feel like that they have that wraparound support.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a great experience because I think and I think people can be shocked when they assume that is the default in
Mhm.
publishing, and as many authors find out the hard way, it's so not. Now, is there anything else you wanted to talk about today that we didn't get into? That is the question I end every interview on.
I'd just like to give a little shout out to a couple of my authors,
Yeah, yeah.
whose books are coming out this year. So we've got John Stevenson, who is a veteran writing about transition from the military. And I've got Maurice Hepworth, who is using his experience as a professional footballer and his leadership experience within business to write his book. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to have both of those coming out this year, and they've just been a real pleasure to work with. So yeah, just wanted to give them a little shout out.
Brilliant. And the invitation stands if either of them want to come on the podcast. I'd love to have some of your authors.
Thank you.
So where can listeners find you?
So the best place to find me is probably on LinkedIn. That's where I do most of my sort of connecting. So if you search for Gemma Holgate, you'll find me, or you can email me at gemma@madisonhousepress.com.
Brilliant. Well, Gemma, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
If you have an epic story, I'd love to hear it. You can find me at dailyprose.com or on LinkedIn. My links and Gemma's are in the show notes. Thanks for listening.